I think riding the bus is one of the easiest ways to decrease the stress in your life. And I think students think it's the opposite. And my lived experience is, no, it significantly decreases stress and to me is a significant quality of life improver.
Welcome to Being the Change, the official podcast of James Madison University. Brought to you by Madison Magazine. Each episode brings you stories of how members of the JMU community combine intellect with action to live lives of purpose and meaning. That's being the change.
What's up, JMU? Andy Perrine here. Welcome to Being the Change. You know, in this episode, we're going to be talking about alternative transportation. You know, about 70% of JMU students live off campus, and it's a major operation to get people to and from campus. That includes also faculty and staff, and getting onto campus, finding a place to park. It's a tremendous stressor on campus, and it's a topic of conversation both interpersonally and in social media all the time. And we've got some experts here with us to talk about alternative ways to get to campus. Dr. Jeff Tang, who's Interim Dean of the College of Integrated Science and Engineering. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you so much, Andy.
So good to see you. Valerie Kramer is JMU's Alternative Transportation Manager. Hey, Valerie.
Hi, Andy.
And we've also got a student here with us, Joseph Groh. He goes by Joe and Joey. So it'd be Joe Groh, I guess, at some point?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay,
Hi.
cool.
Hi, how you doing? Good to be here.
Great to have you. And Joe is a regular rider of the bus, and he's going to help us understand the advantages of that kind of lifestyle choice. And so to get started, Jeff, there's something called Duke's Ride that's been around for a while. It's an interesting project. And you've been involved from the early days. Can you describe what this Duke's Ride program is about?
Sure. This is a project that began several years ago. Me and a colleague of mine, Dr. CJ Hartman, who is the executive director of the Institute for Stewardship of the Natural World, we're on a subcommittee together, the Education and Scholarship Subcommittee of the ISNW, as we call it. And we talked about the disconnect between what people think makes a difference and what actually makes a difference. So people go to recycling bins and think, okay, I'm helping to solve climate change. And they're not, because it does very, very little. It's not that it's bad,
right,
but it doesn't help to solve climate issues, greenhouse gas emissions to any significant degree.
But it helps you feel better about yourself.
It absolutely does. But we thought, well, what if we could refocus some of that energy onto things that might be relatively straightforward, but could make a significant impact. And there's you can look at what the different options are to have a real impact. And some of them are just too hard to do. So getting people to be vegan, if you're not already wanting to be a vegan or a vegetarian, it's hard to motivate you that way. Reducing plane travel, it's massive impact, but it's really hard to get people not to fly.
Right.
Some like renewable energy is great, but it's expensive.
Right.
And so it's harder. So we thought about what are the real opportunities on campus that exist? And one clear option was, transportation. So we know that students complain about traffic and they complain about parking, and yet they live in off-campus student housing complexes that are really close together, and then they drive single-person occupancy vehicles to and from campus at the same times, wanting to park in the same spots. And we thought, well, we know that there's buses that the university already contracts with the city to operate that are not heavily utilized on these commuter routes.
Right.
Why don't we just get people to be like, hey, light bulb, what if instead of driving my vehicle, I just hop on the bus, which is fare free for me because it's already included in my tuition, just like checking out a book from the library. What if we could motivate them to ride the bus? The challenge is that motivating change is very difficult. It's a culture change. CJ had gone to a DEQ workshop on community-based social marketing.
Which is the DEQ is the Department of Economic...
Department of Environmental Quality.
Environmental Quality, right.
And so they do a lot of sustainability-related activities for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so she was excited by this, but said, we need to bring in some experts from communication studies who really know what they're doing. So partnered with Pete Pasumik, a couple of other faculty members from the School of Communications. Valerie joined on with her expertise in alternative transportation, and we really kind of formed this team to create this marketing and outreach effort to try and get students to reconsider the decision that many of them make, which is just to reflexively drive their own vehicle to campus to go to class every day.
And this is a fairly huge cultural shift over the years. When I was a student in the early 80s, I lived off campus, and if I could walk generally, but if I drove, I had a 72 Nova with 4 doors, and those bench seats so you could fit like 7 people in it. I would just honk my horn in the parking lot, and people would come out and just jump in the car, and there would be 5 or 6 of us. Sometimes I didn't even know who they were, and we'd drive to campus. But it's so different now. Do you have any idea what's led to that change?
I think partly that is the result of cultural changes that have separated us in general as Americans.
Sure.
We do more things on our own, that we have fewer in-person community gatherings, and we are more used to doing our own things, having our own sort of flexibility, doing what we want, when we want. When we were kids, when a television episode aired, that's when it aired,
Right.
and that's when you watched it.
Right.
And sometimes there's a cliffhanger between one season and the next. There's nothing you could do about it. This
Right.
generation doesn't have that, and I think there's sets of expectations of being able to do what I want to do when I want to do, and relying upon somebody else for a ride doesn't work. I also think that there are expectations associated with attending university, which has gotten more and more expensive,
Right.
and the amenities that come along with it. And one of those is parking. And students complain all the time about lack of parking, which is ironic because literally we always have enough spaces.
Right.
The only question is where they are.
Right.
But I think that is a culture that is very American. If you go to other countries, this is not the culture
Sure.
that exists, but it's very deeply ingrained in American culture is we ought to have a parking space very close to where we're going, and it should be convenient and available all
Right.
the time. And when it's not, we complain. And in fact, if you ask students, what's the biggest problem on campus, which I've done in my classes on problem solving multiple times, they will always say parking.
Right.
Always, always, always. Even though we can document, and Valerie can attest to this, we have enough parking spaces all the time. There's never a time when we run out.
And there's not a general awareness about that. I mean, folks really, I've heard people say a parking permit is really a fishing license, but really there's actually enough fish for everybody.
The only question is how far are you willing to walk?
Right.
We'll be right back.
What are the goals of Duke's Ride, Valerie? I mean, it's a pretty steep hill to climb to change behavior like that.
So the main goal is to get students to consider how they commute and to commute in a way that is not a single occupancy vehicle. And most of the time, the most efficient way to do that is to ride the bus. 80% of off-campus students drive a single occupancy vehicle to campus. The buses are running, most of them at about 20% capacity, so there's plenty of room on the bus. One of my favorite visuals for this is 70 people fit on a bus, but the amount of space that 70 cars take up on the road is such a big difference.
It's huge. That's a great analogy. Yeah. What are some of the things that Duke's Ride have done to try and get students to see the advantage? And we're going to hear from Joey in a little bit because I'm sure that he's got some excellent testimony as to how his life has been improved.
Oh, yes.
So to get the word out, we do a lot of tabling events. I'm always at choices, at orientation, at off-campus life events when students are deciding where they're going to live next year. For part of the Duke's Ride project to find out how to change student behaviors, we've done a number of surveys online, intercept surveys, focus groups, and we have redone the entire alternative transportation website and added a Duke's Ride section. You can go to the Duke's Ride website, and there will be a drop down for most off-campus apartments, and it will give you directions for how to take the bus from your off-campus apartment. And I also make a version of that into folders every summer and drop them off at participating apartment complexes so students can have that information handed to them when they move into their apartment.
So it's all laid out there for them. Well, Joey, how did you discover this free bus system on campus, and what impelled you to want to ride?
Well, I would say even if you don't live off campus, I'm sure almost every student has taken the ICS bus at least once, so they're aware of that JMU has buses.
And that's the inter-campus shuttle.
Right, yes, the one that just goes all around and around all day. And when you're waiting for those, you'll see the different colored lines around where the ICS stops at Festival. And once I moved off campus, it was my junior year, all I had to do was figure out which one led to my complex, and it's the same thing. I mean, it's as simple as just showing up and then getting on the bus and then waiting for it to go home. I took advantage of it. I don't know.
That's awesome. Well, the bus service has been around since the carrier era, so it's not something new that is just being introduced to the campus. Well, how does this effort, Duke's Ride, fit into the larger scheme of alternative transportation at JMU?
So alternative transportation has a similar goal of Duke's Ride, to get students to commute to campus in a way that is not a single occupancy vehicle. It reduces traffic, not just on campus but in Harrisonburg, but studies show that if you commute using some sort of active transportation, it reduces your stress levels, it helps your focus when you arrive. So if you're a student in class or if you're on your way to work when you get there.
Well, I've seen students in their vehicles sort of circling through the different lots, and that to me looks like a real bummer of a way to spend your time, because you're basically in competition with your fellow students looking for that rare resource. Do you feel like Joey, do you feel like you've got a little bit more serenity going for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, full disclosure, I don't have a car. So I wouldn't say I'm currently making the choice to take the bus, but if I did have one, I fully believe I would still take the bus, because, I mean, gas is $3 a gallon. I spend $60 on gas. Parking pass, I don't know how much, I think it's several $100s. $300? Yeah, okay, so I would, if I'm not taking if I'm taking the bus, I'm spending $300 less per year. So I really
not including gas.
Not including gas.
Right.
So I don't see why I wouldn't, and certainly, I feel it's still the most convenient way of doing things.
Well, you can study for a test while you're riding the bus.
Right. You can just hang it. Like, I think I'm a little bit fortunate because I'm an ISAT student, and the festival stop is right next to where I want to be almost all the time. But even if I was a history major or anything that just takes place on main campus, I would get off festival, I would wait at festival for an ICS, get on the ICS, go to main campus.
Easy.
So really not much walking is involved.
Well, you mentioned the cost of a parking pass. The university recently introduced a one-day parking pass.
We've actually had that for years, but people just don't know about it.
And so it seems to me that if you want to save money and just rely on that one-day pass idea, is you can drive when you need to by buying a one-day pass.
Absolutely.
But save the money and ride the bus the rest of the time.
Yeah, I think the problem is that so many people just don't know that exists.
Right.
And I do, because there was a year and a half where I rode my bike to campus almost all the time.
Sure.
But occasionally I needed to have a car, and I do own a car, fortunately. And so being able to have that option is really, really nice. It's notable, though, in our little conversation here, some of the ironies that really strike me.
What's
we
that?
talk about alternative transportation as though car is like the supposed norm, that of course you're going to drive to campus. And again, that's a very specifically U.S. mindset,
Yes.
and not everywhere in the U.S. You go to New York City, it's not assumed that everyone's going to be driving, because it's a horrible pain. But I think many of the students that we have come with those kinds of expectations. The whole competing against other students, trying to sort of find a spot and quickly get in it. The stress that comes with that. Yeah. Our students are so stressed out, and yet they don't think about the non-school stressors that they can experience, including driving to campus. There's this illusion that it gives you more power because you're worried about missing the bus. And sure, that happens, but sometimes there's an accident, right? And so you get stuck in traffic. Sometimes you can't find a spot where you want it to be, and you end up being late because you're driving around for a spot. So I think there's a lot of built-in assumptions that we just don't question, because there's such a part of our cultural identity and practice that we just never open up the possibility of thinking a different way.
And do you bring this sort of thinking to classes? Some of you and your teaching and some of your fellow faculty in size?
We certainly do. We don't do a lot focused just on transportation, but I was fortunate enough for 3 years to teach a problem-solving class where we chose transportation as the topic. And in fact, one of those years, one of our student project teams chose parking as the problem. And they were like, parking is just a big revenue generator for the campus, and they were very convinced that parking was this huge problem. Then they actually talked to the parking office and realized how it worked and how it was revenue neutral and how there was actually plenty of parking spaces. And very, very quickly, they're like, this is not a parking problem. And they decided it was a cultural problem. It was an expectations problem. And so we do incorporate alternative transportation and some of those ideas. We do a lot of sustainability-related teaching and transportation-related teaching. We have an autonomous vehicle project that's really exciting, that's student-built golf cart that's autonomous. We've had a number of different projects that look at buses, tracking buses, data for parking spaces. So over the years, we've had a lot of different transportation-related projects, I think partly because students want to solve problems that they experience. It gets you motivated when you see a problem in your daily life and you feel like I can do something to try and help solve that.
Well, especially since the pandemic, we hear a lot of students testifying that they feel isolated and that they feel separate from their fellow students. It seems to me that adopting this kind of lifestyle might dial you back into being part of a culture.
Absolutely. I mean, I think very subtly being on a bus and just taking the bus all the time does give me a strange sense of community.
Right.
Because I see the same people in the morning, like at 8:40 or something when I'm going to campus, and then the same people at 5 when I'm going home. And also, all the bus drivers that I've ever met are so nice.
Yeah, they are. They're all
they're
characters.
Just great to talk to.
Yeah.
So, and you'll know, like, after you get on a bus, they'll recognize you next time, and it gets to a point where you're just like, hey, how's it going, man? Every time you see them. And
That's right.
It's just nice.
Well, Jeff, you mentioned New York City. I grew up in the city. And Joe, you talking about the sense of community when you're on the bus. Even in New York on the subway, everybody's looking at their phone or reading something. But if something goes wrong and somebody falls down or somebody needs help, everybody's up like that. You don't think about New Yorkers in that way, but the sense of community when you're all on the same ship is incredible.
It is, absolutely, yeah.
And I think the story that Jory told before is kind of what we want to happen. The students, when they come their first year, they're pretty much all living on campus. They ride the ICS, it's convenient, it's packed, but then they also get the sense that all the buses are packed, and really it's just the ICS that's packed. All the other buses have plenty of room almost all the time, and what we could get them to do is to take those practices of just learning the bus schedule, and ICS is a little easier because they come all the time, but the commuter bus lines come pretty frequently as well, right? And so if you can just get in that habit, just, hey, look and see, I'm going to be living here next year, let me check that out. Even if they have a car, it saves a ton of money. It decreases their stress. They don't have to worry about traffic. I know I take the bus to work all the time, and it's so nice just not to have to worry about things, to be able to think about my day, or to read a news article, or chill out with some music, or see a colleague and connect with them, the kind of community you're talking about. I think if we can get people to do that, they can realize what the possibilities are, but not enough of them are like Joey, willing to kind of say, oh yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take that leap. And I think we want to make it easier. We want to make it more normal to make those kinds of changes because the infrastructure's there. You're already paying for it with your tuition dollars. Take advantage of it.
Well, ironically, I would like to see the commuter buses more packed because that way I'll know a lot of people are using it.
That's right. And you'd probably want to see the commuter buses packed too, Valerie, right?
I would love to see that.
Well, it's not just buses too. I mean, you work on a whole bunch of other modality in terms of alternative transportation. Isn't that right?
Yes. So JMU is a silver level bicycle friendly university.
What does that mean?
The League of American Bicyclists puts out a system for how bicycle friendly different universities, cities, businesses are. So we, JMU, have attained a silver level just a couple of years ago. We have over 600 bike racks on campus. There's one outside of every academic building, residence hall, anywhere that you need a bike rack. We have over 12 pump and maintenance stations There's covered bike parking inside of all the parking garages, and that's a common place to also find the pump and maintenance stations because it keeps them out of the weather.
Can I just jump in here and say, make a plug for electric bikes? When I was biking, I lived on the top of a hill, worked on the top of a hill, and even when I was in real good shape, you're always sweating. And electric bikes have become so much more common. They're pretty reasonably priced. I know a number of colleagues who use them very regularly. It's great for sort of hilly terrain because it really turns it into something pretty easy, and it's so much more convenient.
Sure.
A colleague of mine talked to me the other day. He's like, the fastest way that I can get from my house to my office is on an electric bike, faster than any other. Even with no traffic, that's still the best option for him. And I think a lot of other people might think twice if they knew just how easy and how convenient that sort of biking option can be. So while the Duke's Ride project is really focused on bus ridership, in part because for many students that's going to be the most sensible option, we really, if somebody wants to walk, take a bike, scooter, whatever it is, we would all be really happy about that as well.
Well, plus you feel like a superhero when you're on one of those electric bikes. Look how fast I'm going.
For students who don't have an electric bike, but maybe they have a regular bike, one of the tips that I give them, because one of the common complaints about biking that I hear is the hills. So an interesting fact is that most of the off-campus apartment complexes are uphill from JMU. So you could roll down the hill to get to campus, come to class on your own time, do your own thing, and then when you're ready to go home and you don't want to ride up that big hill, maybe on Port or on Neff Avenue, you can put your bike on the front of a bus. All of the buses take 2 bikes on the front and let the bus take you home, and you don't have to pedal up the hill.
That's amazing. I've seen them. I've seen buses with several bikes on the front at times.
Oh, I've done it several times where it's like, I don't have quite as much energy at the end of the day as I thought. And it's almost like insurance, right? That if you take your bike in, you feel like, I'm just not sure how to be feeling.
Or it's
at the end of the day,
raining.
or it's raining, whatever. That it's really nice to know that. And I've never had the experience of there not being a place to put my bike.
Right. Well, Valerie, where can folks find out more information about all of the different efforts that Alternative Transportation and Duke's Ride is providing?
jmu.edu/transportation.
Got it. That's easy.
Simple.
Well, what's the one thing you would want a student listening to this or a parent listening to this to take away from the conversation?
All of the local buses are fare-free for your student. They are easy and convenient to use.
And safe.
And very safe.
Jeff?
Yes.
I would say that I think riding the bus is one of the easiest ways to decrease the stress in your life. And I think students think it's the opposite. And my lived experience is, no, it significantly decreases stress and to me is a significant quality of life improver.
Agreed. Joey?
My favorite part about riding the bus, and there's a lot of overlap with things I already said, but just being able to just sit down and do anything else while going home is great. I actually got a little portable game console from 2005 recently. My buddy Victor customized it for me. Shout out
Old
Victor,
school.
if he's listening to this.
Old school.
But I got that specifically so I could play it while on the bus because it fits in my pocket and I can just when going home pull it out.
Right on.
Play it and then I'm home.
Well, Joey, Jeff, and Valerie, thanks so much for joining us on Being the Change. And I'm hopeful that the message will get through to folks, that there's lots of easier and less stressful ways to get to campus. So thanks for being with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, remember, listeners, if you want to get in touch with us and suggest an episode of Being the Change, you can reach us at beingthechange@jmu.edu. Until next episode, go Dukes.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe to hear more stories about how members of the JMU community are being the change. Dive deeper and explore countless other stories at jmu.edu/Madison Magazine. Go Dukes!
The Being the Change podcast was conceived by Jim Heffernan, editor of Madison Magazine, and me, Andy Perrine, head of JMU Marketing. Thanks to Jenna Polk and her team at the Rose Library Studios, where the show is recorded by Cody Troyer, Steve Adderton, and Olive Santos, all of the crazy talented JMU photo video team, who then produced the final episodes at the Ice House in downtown Harrisonburg. Original music by 2019 alumnus Neil Perrine. You can find the Being the Change podcast on all the popular platforms where we hope you'll like, share, and subscribe.